Burying the dead in Turkey. Mass graves are dug as the death toll climbs again. There's little time for ceremony as people are laid to rest, and nearly a week after the quake struck, homeless survivors are struggling in the bitter cold. Also tonight, a murder investigation begins in Warrington after a teenage girl is found stabbed in a park. The BBC's chairman is under pressure to resign after a scathing report into his conduct, and
might go on his own, gets it away to Arundel. Arundel scores!
in the Six Nations, England are back to winning ways against Italy at Twickenham.
This is ITV News with Geraint Vincent.
Good evening. The number of people confirmed to have died in the earthquake which struck Turkey and Syria is now more than 33,000. In the worst affected areas, funerals have been taking place today with bulldozers used to dig mass graves. Meanwhile, concern is growing for those who managed to survive the disaster but who are now living in tents in what are freezing temperatures. Peter Smith reports from Iskenderun on Turkey's Mediterranean coast.
The dead are buried to the sounds of prayer and heavy machinery. With more than 30,000 confirmed dead in Turkey and Syria, funerals are now on an industrial scale. There is no time for headstones here. No sooner is one person in the ground, they go to get the next. The smell of death is everywhere. The scale simply horrifying. While Turkey deals with its dead, it's also trying to cope with the living. The earthquake hit an area almost as big as Great Britain, affecting 13.5 million people. Makeshift camps are being hastily constructed, but entire cities have been made homeless. This city of Iskenderun had a population of 2.5 million. The camp for those who've lost their homes, when it is finished, will only have capacity for 3,500. This is the challenge across southeast Turkey now. Despite the best efforts of aid workers, there are not enough tents and there are not enough toilets. So the next threat for those who've survived the earthquake comes from being crammed in to unsanitary conditions. We're invited to see inside one of the tents. For 7 people. We don't have anywhere to wash, the woman tells me. This place is not hygienic. Those who don't even have a tent must find their own shelter for bitterly cold nights. 4 children sleep in this lorry cabin.
We need a home to live in. Even a shipping container would do. And all the children here need clothes.
Rescuers still search for survivors here, but now begins the search for blame. Dozens of building contractors from this region have been detained, suspected of cutting corners with devastating consequences. A natural disaster, but Turkey wants to know if it was made worse by the hand of man. Peter Smith, ITV News, Iskenderun.
Back home, and police have begun a murder investigation after a 16-year-old girl was found with multiple stab wounds in a park in Cheshire. Brianna Jai was found by members of the public in Warrington yesterday. She died at the scene. Sam Holder has the latest.
She was just 16 years old. Brianna Jai found dead in a park in Warrington with multiple stab wounds. Brianna was discovered by members of the public on a path in Colchester yesterday afternoon. Cheshire Police described it as a truly awful attack and say they are treating her death as murder.
We're appealing for 2 individuals in particular. One is a male in his late teens, early 20s. He's a white male and he's wearing quite a distinctive long, dark, possibly black, thick coat. Dark hair, quite long, under a hood of some sort. And he was with a female who, again, same age, late teens, early 20s. She had long, curly, dark hair as well. And she was wearing quite a distinctive blanket-type coat, which was purple or red.
Officers also want to speak to anyone else who was in the park at the time and any homes or businesses with CCTV, as they try to piece together what led to this horror and understand what happened to 16-year-old Brianna Ghey. Sam Holder, ITV News.
The chairman of the BBC is facing calls to step down tonight after a damning report by MPs into his conduct. It found Richard Sharp made significant errors of judgment when he acted as a go-between in the arrangement of a loan for the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He didn't tell MPs about his involvement when he applied for the chairman's job. Our political reporter Amy Lewis has more.
One was the Prime Minister looking for a loan. The other was the rich Tory party donor hoping to become chair of the BBC. Richard Sharp is accused of being the go-between when arranging the loan for Boris Johnson, who several months later backed his move to the broadcaster. But Mr Sharp didn't disclose the full facts to a committee overseeing his appointment, who claim he has shown significant errors of judgment.
The rules are very clear. If there's anything that potentially could embarrass the BBC or indeed any other employer for a public service job, you have to put it down on the form. He chose not to tell us or indeed the interview panel that he had facilitated an £800,000 loan to Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister who then appointed him to the very top job at the BBC.
Due process was followed.
Mr Sharp's appointment was backed by the Culture, Media and Sport Committee 2 years ago. But this week, after the allegations emerged, they summoned the former banker back for a 2-hour grilling.
This clearly causes the BBC embarrassment. Why didn't you disclose it? Just to be clear, I didn't arrange the loan.
Labour claim Mr Sharp's position is now untenable, but one government minister told me it is up to the BBC to decide his future.
Can we really believe that his job was given to him on merits?
Well, I think we have to wait for the result of the inquiry by the Public Appointments Commission. But once we've got that inquiry, we'll know everything will be on the table, and then judgments can be made.
Today, the committee said Mr Sharp should reflect on potential damage caused to trust in the BBC, which expects independence and impartiality.
I think that Richard Sharp can survive this, and the reason for that is I think that the government won't sack him, and then he's showing absolutely no sign that he was prepared to go of his own volition. So in the absence of somebody being able to sack him and him not willing to go on his own volition, I don't think he's going to go.
Richard Sharp denies giving Boris Johnson financial advice and has apologised to BBC staff for the distraction the allegations have caused. Allegations that are still the subject of 2 further investigations. Amy Lewis, ITV News.
The Royal College of Nursing is threatening to escalate its pay dispute in England. Nurses from A&E, intensive care and cancer wards could be asked to join any future walkouts. They have not been involved in the strike so far. Well, Sejal Carrier joins me now. Sejal, announcement of fresh strike dates is imminent, but the unions are raising the stakes, are they?
Yes, the aim is to put pressure on the government to break the deadlock over pay by ramping up the dispute. That would involve more nurses that previously have been exempt from strikes. So those, as you mentioned, in A&E and intensive care units and cancer wards could now be asked to join picket lines. Plus, the strikes could last 48 hours straight, running continuously through 2 days and 2 nights, rather than the 12-hour walkouts we've seen so far. Although staff would honour their legal obligation not to endanger life in an urgent clinical situation. But yes, all of this is designed to increase the impact of the strikes, thereby increasing the pressure on the government. The government isn't indicating that it's going to give in at the moment, urging unions to call off strikes, saying it has tried and tested plans to minimise disruption. If the union decides to escalate the action, then we could see it take place within the next 2 weeks.
OK, Sejal, many thanks. On to sport, and in the Premier League, Manchester United have moved up to second place for the time being. They beat struggling Leeds this afternoon 2-0 at Ellen Road. Marcus Rashford scored the first of 2 late United goals. The victory takes them to within 5 points of leaders Arsenal. Manchester City, meanwhile, are playing Aston Villa right now. A City win will take them back above United into second place, and they're on course to do that at the moment. They lead 3-1 with a few minutes to play. In rugby's Six Nations, England have their first victory of the season. They bounced back from defeat by Scotland to beat Italy 31 points to 14 at Twickenham. Chris Scudder was watching.
He lost his first game in charge, but here was New England coach Steve Borthwick in the bobble hat, getting stuck in with his players in the warm-up. If that was hands-on, here was lift-off. A try for Jack Willis on his England comeback.
And there's a return for Jack Willis.
2 years after a serious knee injury in the same fixture. Sweet return. This was much more like it.
And it is Chesham, and it's a second for England.
A first England try from Ollie Chesham. It was all about forward power. England's driving maul was unstoppable.
George over.
Try number 3 for Jamie George.
And it was a high tackle penalty.
Italy had never beaten England in the Six Nations before and salvaged some pride with 2 tries of their own.
Fosco scoring.
But this was England's day. New coach, fresh faces, 5 tries and plenty of promise for the future too.
It won't be the first time we say that in the Six Nations. Henry Arundel scores.
Chris Scudder, ITV News.
Finally this evening, a teenager, Sky Brown, has become Britain's first skateboarding world champion. The 14-year-old won gold in the park event at the World Championships in the United Arab Emirates with a best score of 90.83 from her 3 runs. She can add the world title to her Olympic bronze medal she won in Tokyo in 2021. And well done to her. That is it for now. I'm back with the late news at 10. Until then, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures moving in from the east, especially around tea time. Heinz now added sugar beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello again. Hope you've all had a lovely Sunday so far. Well, for many of us it's been calm but rather cloudy across the UK this weekend. Looking further ahead though, hopefully we'll get to see more in the way of sunshine and it's going to be feeling a little bit milder out there. However, heads up for later in the week, we're expecting it to turn unsettled for many. Now, in the meantime, coming back to the rest of this evening and tonight, well, we do have some clear skies across some northern and western parts, and this clear slice will work its way into the south by the end of the night. So there may be a few pockets of fog in places, but for most of us, with that cloud tonight, it should be staying frost-free. Now, for some tomorrow morning, may get off to a bit of a grey, gloomy start to the day first thing, but that cloud is going to push its way north and eastwards. It might linger across some eastern counties as we go through the afternoon, but for many parts, you can see plenty of sunshine developing across the UK. It is staying dry out there and feeling a little bit milder too. This time, highs there of 12 degrees. That's 54 in Fahrenheit. Bye-bye.
Heinz now added sugar beans sponsors ITV National Weather.